the way that the game is played. So, well, okay, well, this one it's got a intersectional binary penguin as the lead. You know that they're going to have marked that 20 points higher. It's concerning this particular topic, so you know that it's going to be higher. Or on the inverse is also true. He'll say, okay, it's a comedy. They score comedies lower, and so the formula is there. It's available for all of us to see what it is. And I grew tired of it, so I made a site that said, well, forget that formula. Here's our own. We're going to tell you exactly what it is, and now you decide whether or not you want to see the movie.
Hello and welcome to Reasoned UK with me, Darren Grimes. I so appreciate your support and your company. If you're in a position to do so, please do consider supporting us via the link in the description. You can also support us by subscribing to this channel, liking this video, and indeed sharing it with your friends and family. Now today I want to talk about Worth It or Woke. Now Worth It or Woke are providing a service for which there's clear demand. Now, if you ask yourself what it does, why on earth does this website exist? Well, you see, for the last decade or so, potentially longer, you can turn on your television sets in Britain or indeed across the West, and you'd probably think that our country, the West in general, was a majority black, Asian, homosexual or transgender country, with every advert on the box and film in the studios released from Hollywood containing pretty much anyone other than white, straight men. Now, many of our favourite films, many of our favourite television series, many of our favourite novels that have been adapted into films have now, I think, developed a really, really quite woke angle when it comes to its production values. I mean, I can't imagine the sheer number of race swapping that goes on in Hollywood these days, woke washing, where genders of characters are swapped as well. It's a real industry now of diversity and inclusion on our television sets and in film studios. So James has set up this website and I think it's a really laudable endeavour, and I'm delighted to say that he joins me now to discuss. James, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Now, James, you've chosen to mask your identity here. We've blurred you for your own, well, sanctity, I guess, your own sanity and sanctity. Why is it that you've chosen to blur your identity?
Well, it's a sad reality that in today's world, people with views that diverge from what's considered popular, the popular views by the media. I don't think it's popular worldwide, but
No.
popular by the media, are often doxxed and attacked. And I have a family to protect.
Yeah. So you've set up Worth It or Woke, and for the reasons that I described at the start there, the gender swapping of characters, the race swapping of characters, everything now seems to be filmed through this lens of diversity and inclusion. Gone are the days when scripts or books would be created in their author's image. You've got Lord of the Rings, for example, with new skin colours of characters and all the rest of it. And if you dare say, well, actually, this is a divergence from the author's book, the author's work, you're dismissed as some kind of racist or bigot.
Yeah, that's certainly something that a reality that I've come to terms with in the recent past since I've started this site. I'm not a racist. I don't care about the color of someone's skin. It doesn't make any sense to me. Traditional racism, a new racism, the new definition of racism, by virtue of the color of my skin, I am racist according to the people on.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if your left and our left are the same. On our left, I'm considered to be a racist. I'm not. I mean, there's less genetic difference between people of different skin colors than there are people with different hair color.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah, no, it's that's certainly part of the wokeism that's infecting films today and television. I don't even think that the gender, or not the gender, but the race issue is the biggest problem with the films. I mean, it's an eye rolling annoyance when you see Ariel come in. You're like, well, I know that the reason that they cast this particular actress, one of the reasons is because her skin color checks off a quota box that they've given themselves. But and that's annoying. But then you actually watch the film, and she's terrible. She can sing, there's no doubt about that. She can sing, but she gives a wooden performance. She never looks comfortable on screen. And it's a studio that spent $200 million in the making of the film, and
Wow.
at a minimum $100 million in the marketing of the film. They couldn't have spent a couple of extra dollars to hire somebody who was good in the role. It's just, it makes it for eye rolling. But
Yeah, I
the
think
other issues. Go ahead.
That's a really good point, though, isn't it? And actually, are you of the view that there has been a complete collapse in this old adage or this old notion that actually what you should do as a producer, as a filmmaker, is cast the best actor for the job that meets the specifications of the brief, right? These days, the brief is quite different. The brief seems to be whatever diversity and inclusion box you happen to tick.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, if you go onto our site and you look in the About section, we specifically talk about the reason that we exist is because meritocracy is no more.
Get accused of every ism or phobia. You have missiles thrown at you, viewers just trying to actually, in my view, just go back to how things were, which is, you wouldn't look at a black individual, a trans individual, a woman on screen, and you wouldn't automatically think, oh, that person's there because a film studio wants to tick a certain box, right? So actually, it's making things worse. It's making film worse because people are now of the view that actors don't get there on merit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a disservice to people of color that this has happened, because now how often do you watch a movie and your first assumption, right or wrong, is, well, but they got this role because it checked a box rather than they actually are the most qualified performer for it.
Exactly. And I mean, how much of this, James, in your view, as a film buff, if I may call you that, but how much, in your view, is this down to a sort of a woke washing, to a woke screen, if you will, to hide the fact that there is now terrible writing, that there have been destruction of much loved franchises and the assassination of characters as well? I mean, how much of this is just to, and even saving a few bucks perhaps on talentless actors and actresses, how much is this just woke washing a woke screen to actually hide the fact that film studios are cutting corners like this?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know if they've put that kind of thought into it. I'm sure that there are the number crunchers who have said we're going to save so much money because we cast Halle Bailey instead of Halle Berry. But I I don't know if that's the main motivation. I think that they get to pat themselves on the back. There is something. Have you ever heard of the ESG scores?
Yeah.
That a lot of yeah. So ESG is an issue. I mean, companies like Disney who are barely breaking even with these $100 million pictures. It cannot be simply motivated by them feeling the pleasure of patting themselves on the back for filling these woke boxes.
Yes.
So I don't know how much money is the issue. I will say that it certainly has wokeism, and again, not just race substituting, making women not women in the films.
Absolutely. And I think James, correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, but I think this all came to a head really in it was either 2015 or 2016 when Ghostbusters was remade with an all-female cast. Now, for those who haven't seen the original Ghostbusters, which off the top of my head is an 80s film, James.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mid early 80s.
Mid early 80s. And it's a great film in my view. But they remade it with an all-female cast. Now, frankly, if I wanted to watch a female iteration of Ghostbusters, I'd probably watch The View or Loose Women, which we've got here in the UK, because there are a fair few screaming banshees to be found on The View and Loose Women here in Britain. I'll tell you that much for free. But it went down.
Joy Behar is the most misnamed person on the face of the planet. There's no joy in anything that she does.
Absolutely. And that, to me, was a pivotal moment in film studios being so far removed from film viewers, you know?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I'd agree that, now certainly it's not the first instance of wokeism, but it seemed to be a clarion call. It was unavoidable to see that what we're doing now is artificially putting together this team. It doesn't make any sense to even have a remake because the first one was so good. And if you're not 100% guaranteed that what you're going to do is different enough and high enough quality to remake an absolute classic, that there really can't be any other reason to put all these ladies together than because they can say, look at us, we put these ladies together. In fact, a lot of the marketing was, hey, look how fantastic we are. We put all these women together in these leading roles. And it was a travesty of a movie.
Pat on the back. I mean, how long do you think it's going to be, James, before actually, you know, we get a remake of Star Wars and actually Darth Vader isn't shouting that he's Luke Skywalker's father? He'll be shouting that he's a pregnant, black, neurodiverse transsexual or something to that effect.
Well, you know what? We don't need to have a remake of it because every new iteration of it does exactly that. It's not Ashoka. There's another one of their series coming out, and I don't remember if it was the writer or the director came out, and she had just a typical haircut that makes you groan with shaved sides and on the side, where you just know what you're getting. You know what you're getting, and I hate that I know what I'm getting.
Absolutely,
but
yeah.
But she went on to say something about this new series is all from a woman's point of view, and I wish I could remember the quote, but it is so obvious that it is agenda-driven rather than story-driven, rather than talking about the quality of the narrative. How about you just give me a quality narrative, and if it has a female lead in it, great! I don't care. I actually didn't hate Rey in the first movie of the new Skywalker saga.
Yes.
Yes, she was perfect. Yes, she could, understand the Force implicitly. But I actually thought in the beginning that it was an interesting idea to have this Jedi savant. We've not had that in any of the other films. And, you had Boyega, who was fun and interesting character. And the way that it seemed like those story arcs were going to go, I thought that really could have been interesting. But instead, it all went downhill quite quickly. I mean, that first movie was entertaining, but certainly not revolutionary in any way. But I think I liked her character, and and then they just destroyed any hope of quality.
I mean, how much traffic are you getting? Are you getting a lot of demand for people just wanting to escape this madness?
Yeah. So we did our hard launch in February of this year. I poked around a bit, started building the site in November. And since then, we had been doubling month over month. But thanks to, and this is some delicious irony, thanks to a mocking article done by the Rolling Stone about us at the very end, it was released at the very end of last month. Since then, we have absolutely taken off. I mean, I finished last month with 44,000 views, and right now I'm almost at 200,000 views for this month.
Incredible. That's great.
Yeah. My subscribership to the newsletter has gotten to the point where I'm going to have to significantly upgrade through the company that I use. The revenue from ads, which is still not anything. I'm not really making any money off of it yet. But still, I mean, last month it went up 500%, and this month already I have quadrupled what it was that it was making, and that's just from people viewing the site. Because
other review, that's the word I was looking for, other review websites like Rotten Tomatoes, what's been the decline of those supposedly impartial film reviews websites?
Oh, you know what? Here's a perfect example. So I don't know if you know the podcaster or know of the podcaster Adam Carolla. Are you familiar?
I've heard the name. I've heard the name. Yeah.
All right, so he's a comedian. He's been around for a number of years, and he has one of the most successful podcasts in certainly in the United States, called the Adam Carolla Show. I can't recommend it highly enough. And he and I diverge significantly on a number of views. I am a religious conservative, and he's just not a crazy person. Uh, and I think he would agree with that.
Absolutely.
Certainly fiscally conservative. Well, he has a game that he plays on his radio show or podcast every now and again called the Rotten Tomatoes game, where his panel, and his guests will try to guess what the critics scored a particular film. And you can listen, and he knows the way that the game is played. So, okay, well, this one it's got a intersectional binary penguin as the lead. You know that they're going to have marked that 20 points higher. It's concerning this particular topic, so you know that it's going to be higher. Or on the inverse is also true. He'll say, okay, it's a comedy. They score comedies lower, and so the formula is there. It's available for all of us to see what it is. And I grew tired of it, so I made a site that said, well, forget that formula. Here's our own. We're going to tell you exactly what it is, and now you decide whether or not you want to see the movie.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, and a good way of describing it, that it's so predictable. It's not just the reviews that are so predictable, it's the films themselves that are so predictable as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
Is this a case of, in your view, film studios desperate not to be caught in the crosshairs of a woke Twitter mob, that'll seek to cancel them for not being toxic or racist or problematic or not an ally or some other nonsense?
I'm sure that excuse me, I'm sure that there are some filmmakers who are caught in those crosshairs, but I honestly think that it's more that the people who are making these movies, for the large part of them, at least the people in power, are those advocates. They are the woke mob. They're true believers in what it is that they're doing. And combine that with the fact that we're now in a generation of writers and filmmakers who all grew up in the suburbs and not experiencing any hardship to speak of. Their version of hardship is that they got bullied in school. Well, that's called character building. You take karate and you kick your bully's ass, and then you move on and you're a better person for it.
I mean, do you think as well, I don't know if you've seen the example that we had here in Britain where Anne Boleyn, she was a wife of one of the wives of Henry VIII, and Anne Boleyn was represented by a black woman, a black actress in this production on her life. Now, she wasn't black, she was very much white. Now, is that just a case of it's cheaper to cast this young black actress than it is to cast Helen Mirren, for example?
No, this is an instance of we're substituting advocacy and leftist policy for creativity. They no longer have to do something actually interesting to get their kudos from critics and whatnot. They get invited to the interview circuit because of their brave decision, which I don't know how it is brave to do something that's lauded by every major media outlet out there, but that's what they call it, and they feel good about themselves. Nah, it's just substituting for creativity.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the traffic that's going to your website, right, is down to what I would deem to be a desire for our series and our sequels to be just left alone, right? For the works of the books that we love to remain as they are, for history, like Anne Boleyn's history, to be shown as it was, warts and all. And we want cinema to be free from this ESG, this environmental, governmental whackery and wokery, and instead be entranced by film and fantasy. Not this new diversity, what I would call diversity bollocks, right? that's what is down to this traffic that's coming to your website for reviews that are frank and fair.
Everybody who goes there, with the exception of a handful of trolls, they go to the movies to be transported into the reality of the film that they're watching. They want to emotionally connect to these characters, whether it's because they want to hate them, but they want to have a sense of catharsis at the end of that. And you can only have that catharsis if you are the greater the catharsis, the more involved you were, the more attached you were to the story and to the characters. And every moment that we're stopping and rolling our eyes, we're going, I only put that in there because of this agenda, or whatever woke thing that they put in there that takes you out of the moment. Everything that takes you out of the moment, just like bad special effects, takes you out of the moment. Anything that does that, any aspect of the film that takes you out of the film or out of the reality of the film, is a disservice to the audience, and that's who is going to my website. And I have to say that one of the big criticisms that I get from people on the other side is that we're politicizing. They say that we're politicizing film, and no, we're not. We are pointing out the politicization of films. If you look at my website, the way that the reviews are set up, it has definitive sections. We have the overall score, then we break down where that score came from. Wokeism is 1/5 of that. 1/5. The others we're talking about the plot, the story, the director, the visuals, the performances, the artistic merit of it. Then we have our review. I try to keep the reviews as apolitical as possible. My sense of humor comes through, and I make fun of some things. It's baked in as well. But I do try to be as objective as possible within the particular review. And then we have an entirely separate section where I pick apart the politics, the agenda-driven elements of the film. We are not politicizing these films. We are tired of films being politicized.
Absolutely.
We're calling it out and pointing out what those instances are.
And of course, I'll put a link in the description to the website itself. But just finally then, James, the solution here, right? Surely the solution is not to engage, to purchase, to stream content that takes viewers for granted quite as much as Hollywood does today, and that ultimately your website is doing us a great service in giving us a platform to be able to decide which films are trying to take us for a ride.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think that's the only thing that we can do. I don't know how effective it will be now, thanks to this ESG stuff. Ultimately, it will. Ultimately, it will be effective by, I hate to use the word boycotting, but just by voting with your dollars. Yeah. Voting with your dollars will be effective eventually. These huge conglomerates that are holding ESG scores over the heads of these studios, eventually the studios will have to stop making product that satisfies those ESG scores, because nobody will be watching this stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I wish you all the very best. James, thank you for what you do, and thank you for your time as well.
Well, thank you very much.
Reasoned relies upon grassroots donations from people like yourself that want us to continue producing our high quality, free thinking content. So please do consider clicking the link and donating, no matter how big, no matter how small, because it really does ensure that we can keep on keeping on.